Imagine you're seriously looking for a long-term stable partner. Naturally, one of the first questions that comes to mind is, what actually makes someone compatible over time? At a basic level, most people intuitively understand that extreme differences between two partners can create ongoing tension, especially when those differences exist across the fundamental dimensions of personality. For example, think about extroversion and introversion. If you are highly extroverted and your partner is deeply introverted, the two of you will almost certainly experience recurring conflict around social life. How often should you go out? How many people should you see? How much time should be spent alone versus surrounded by others? This isn't just a disagreement of opinion, it's a difference in how two nervous systems are wired. Introverted individuals don't typically enjoy large-scale social environments. One-on-one interaction may feel comfortable, even energizing, but group settings tend to drain them. Over time, too much social stimulation becomes exhausting rather than fulfilling. On the other hand, extroverted individuals thrive on social engagement. Remove that stimulation for too long, and they don't just feel bored, they begin to feel depleted. Social interaction isn't optional for them. It's deeply tied to what motivates them, uplifts them, and gives them a sense of vitality. So when two people sit at opposite ends of this spectrum, finding a lasting compromise becomes extremely difficult. Not because either person is wrong, but because each person is responding to their biology. Now let's consider another core dimension: agreeableness. If you're highly agreeable and your partner is highly disagreeable, conflict is almost inevitable. Agreeable people tend to prioritize harmony. They often say, "whatever you want," to keep the peace. Disagreeable people, however, tend to challenge, confront, and demand clarity. Over time, the disagreeable partner may become frustrated, thinking, "I don't even know what you want anymore. Stand up for yourself." Meanwhile, the agreeable partner begins to experience the other as harsh, abrasive, and emotionally exhausting. Each person views the other as flawed, when in reality, they're simply operating from different psychological orientations. This difference is particularly relevant in romantic relationships because, on average, women score higher in agreeableness than men. The difference isn't massive, but it's statistically meaningful. Roughly speaking, if you randomly pair men and women, the woman will be more agreeable about 60% of the time. That might not sound dramatic, but in psychological research, that's a substantial and reliable difference. And it helps explain why disagreements around communication, emotional expression, and conflict style are so common between partners. Now let's shift to another trait that strongly influences relationship satisfaction: conscientiousness. Conscientious people tend to be disciplined, structured, and highly industrious. They are often sensitive to disorder, and they experience discomfort when things feel chaotic or unproductive. Interestingly, industriousness doesn't necessarily bring pleasure in the way extroversion does. Extroversion is associated with positive emotion. Industriousness seems to function differently. The prevailing idea is that industrious people don't feel good because they're working. They feel bad when they're not. Doing nothing creates an internal sense of unease. Being inactive feels wrong. So they stay busy, productive, and focused, not necessarily because it brings joy, but because it relieves discomfort. From an evolutionary perspective, this makes sense. Human societies have always relied on shared labor. In small communities, people who consistently failed to contribute likely created resentment. Over time, those dynamics shaped strong psychological expectations around effort and productivity. As a result, conscientious individuals often feel a deep ethical responsibility to contribute. When they aren't doing something useful, they experience guilt, tension, or restlessness. This has obvious implications for relationships. Being with a conscientious partner has clear advantages. They work hard, they show up, they're reliable. But there are also downsides. They may struggle to relax. They may prioritize tasks over leisure. They may feel irritated by inactivity. So if you're someone who values spontaneity, playfulness, or a relaxed lifestyle, a highly conscientious partner may feel rigid or overly serious. At the same time, if you're conscientious yourself and your partner is not, you'll likely feel disappointed or resentful. Their lack of structure or drive may feel irresponsible to you. Even if they help you relax, you may still perceive them as not pulling their weight. This tension becomes even more pronounced when we look at the orderliness aspect of conscientiousness. Orderly individuals are more sensitive to mess and disorder. They notice clutter sooner. They feel compelled to address it earlier. Even small differences here can cause major friction. If you've ever lived with a roommate who tolerated mess far longer than you did, you understand this immediately. You don't need to be dramatically more orderly to become the person constantly cleaning, organizing, and feeling frustrated. Research suggests that women, on average, are slightly more orderly than men. Again, the difference isn't enormous, but it's enough to matter. This may help explain why household labor often becomes uneven, even when both partners intend to contribute equally. If one person becomes uncomfortable with disorder even slightly sooner, they'll almost always be the one to act first. Over time, that small difference compounds into a persistent imbalance. Now imagine the tension when a very orderly person lives with a very disorderly partner. The orderly partner feels stressed, irritated, and overwhelmed by chaos. The disorderly partner feels judged, controlled, and criticized. Each person views the other as unreasonable. One sees uptight rigidity. The other sees careless chaos. This is why understanding personality traits matters so much. Not to label people as good or bad, but to anticipate where conflict is likely to emerge. Personality awareness gives you a better chance of choosing someone you can actually live with long-term. That doesn't mean you should find someone identical to you. In fact, that may not be ideal either. If two people share the same strengths, they also share the same weaknesses. That can create blind spots. An agreeable person might benefit from having a slightly disagreeable partner who introduces assertiveness. A disagreeable person might benefit from an agreeable partner who softens rough edges. The same applies across traits. Complementarity can be healthy, but only within limits. What we don't fully understand yet is the exact optimal balance for long-term thriving. That remains an open question in psychology. But what we do understand is this: when partners differ too greatly in fundamental personality traits, those differences don't disappear with love or effort. They become ongoing sources of tension. Not because either person is wrong, but because their needs, thresholds, and instincts are fundamentally different. And that's why compatibility isn't about perfection. It's about alignment within tolerable ranges. Understanding yourself deeply gives you a better chance of understanding others. And understanding both gives you the clarity needed to build relationships that don't just survive, but actually last. Because long-term harmony isn't created by ignoring differences. It's created by recognizing them and choosing wisely.